They don't want you to know this, because Ring Around the Rosie, the innocent little rhyme you sang as a child, hides one of the darkest secrets in history. And once you hear it, you'll never think of this song the same way again. Children's voices fade in softly, chanting the rhyme. Laughter echoes. Then, suddenly, the sound distorts. A chilling plague doctor's mask flashes on screen. The music cuts to silence. Welcome to the Silent Lodge, where forgotten history, twisted folklore, and the dark truths behind familiar tales are finally revealed. If you've ever wondered about the sinister meaning behind the stories you thought were harmless, you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to hear will haunt you. Most people think Ring Around the Rosie is just a sweet little game. Children stand in a circle, holding hands, skipping around, singing a few lines, and then they collapse to the ground, laughing. Simple, harmless. But what if I told you that this circle wasn't just a playful game, but a reflection of death itself? What if the laughter of children masked a memory of a time when falling down didn't mean pretending, but dying? To understand this rhyme, we need to step back nearly 700 years, back to the mid-13th century, a time when Europe was gripped by fear, death, and despair, a time when a single disease wiped out almost half the population. It was called the Black Death, and for those who survived, it was a living nightmare, a horror beyond imagination. And it is in this nightmare that many believe Ring Around the Rosie was born. Imagine a world where every corner of your town is haunted by the sound of death bells, where your neighbors vanish one by one, homes are abandoned, and the air itself smells of decay. Imagine living in constant fear of your own body. A cough, a sneeze, a rash, any small sign could mean that death was already inside you. And imagine being a child in this world, too young to understand disease, too innocent to grasp the full weight of death, yet surrounded by it every single day. What do children do in times of terror? They play, they sing, they find a way to make sense of the chaos around them. Some say Ring Around the Rosie was their way of doing just that. On the surface, it sounds like nonsense. But once you peel back the words, the rhyme begins to tell a story of infection, of failed cures, of death, and of a society falling apart. This is why so many believe Ring Around the Rosie is not just a song. It's a memory, a haunting whisper of a world ravaged by plague. And to truly understand it, we need to step inside that nightmare, the Black Death itself. The year is 1347. A ship docks in the port city of Messina, Sicily. On board are sailors, weak, pale, and feverish. Some are already dead. The survivors are covered in black boils, oozing blood and pus. Within days, the disease spreads like wildfire, and Europe's nightmare begins. The people called it the Great Mortality. We know it today as the Black Death. In less than 5 years, it wiped out between 75 and 200 million people. That's nearly half of Europe's population gone in the blink of an eye. Whole towns were emptied. Villages vanished from the map. Families were destroyed overnight. Imagine walking through your city and seeing cart after cart piled high with bodies, rolling down the street toward mass graves. Imagine the stench of death hanging in the air, so thick that people stuffed flowers and herbs into their clothing just to cover it up. Imagine the fear, not knowing how it spread, not knowing how to stop it, not knowing if you or your loved ones would be alive tomorrow. The symptoms were as terrifying as the death toll. It began with fever and chills, then quickly turned into large, black swellings in the armpits and groin. These were called buboes, and they were agonizing. Victims coughed, spat blood, And in most cases, death came within just a few days. The speed and brutality of the disease left people convinced that the end of the world had arrived. And yet, in the middle of this horror, life went on. People still prayed, they still worked, and children still played. But what they saw, what they lived through, left a mark. Their games and songs absorbed pieces of the world around them, and so some believe that in the middle of death, children created a rhyme that would echo through centuries. Ring Around the Rosie. It's playful, it's catchy. But think about the image of a ring, a circle. During the plague, people noticed red circular rashes forming on the skin, often the first sign of infection. That Rosie may not be a flower at all, but the mark of death itself, a pocket full of posies. When the stench of rotting bodies filled the streets, people stuffed herbs and flowers in their pockets to mask the smell. Some even believed these posies would protect them from disease. It didn't work. Ashes, ashes. In some versions, this line is a tissue, mimicking the sneezes of the sick. In others, it's ashes, ashes, a chilling reference to cremation or the ashes of the dead. And finally, we all fall down. It sounds like children collapsing to the ground in laughter. But during the plague, everyone, rich or poor, powerful or weak, eventually fell. To death, one by one, circle after circle, ring around the Rosie. The rhyme seems so simple. 4 short lines, repeated in playgrounds for centuries. But when you peel back the surface, every single phrase reveals something sinister. Ring around the Rosie. Picture a child's skin erupting with a red circular rash. At first, it looks like nothing, just a little irritation. But in the 1300s, that ring of red could mean death. The Rosie wasn't a flower in your hand. It was a sign that the plague was already inside you, spreading through your blood. People described it as a circle of doom, the first mark that told you your days were numbered. When children sang Ring Around the Rosie, were they unknowingly echoing the first terrifying symptom of the Black Death? A pocket full of posies. It sounds like a child's game of gathering flowers, right? But during the plague, flowers and herbs weren't just decorations. They were desperate weapons. The stench of death was everywhere: rotting bodies, open graves, infected sores. People carried posies in their pockets, stuffed them into masks, and even hung them around their necks, hoping the fragrance would protect them from disease. Physicians, the infamous plague doctors with their long beak masks, filled those masks with posies, lavender, and rosemary. They thought sweet smells could ward off the infection. It didn't. But in the rhyme, the posies remain, a reminder of the false hope people clung to. Ashes, ashes. This line changes depending on where you are. In some versions, it's a tissue, mimicking the sneezing that often preceded death. In other versions, it's ashes, ashes, a chilling nod to cremation, or to the piles of ashes left after entire neighborhoods were burned in an attempt to stop the spread. Ashes became a symbol of destruction, of bodies turned to dust, of lives reduced to nothing. Whether it's sneezing or burning, both images tie directly to the terror of plague. We all fall down. This is where the laughter stops. Children collapse in circles, pretending to die, before springing back up again. But during the Black Death, there was no springing back. Everyone fell. Mothers, fathers, kings, peasants, children. Whole families dropped in the span of a week. In some towns, there weren't even enough survivors to bury the dead. We All Fall Down wasn't a game. It was a grim reality that spared no one. Line by line, the rhyme paints a picture of plague. The rash, the desperate remedies, the sneezes, the ashes, and finally, the inevitable death. And yet, it survived, passed from generation to generation, from plague years into peacetime, from villages stricken with death to playgrounds filled with laughter. The question is, was this truly born from the Black Death? Or have we projected our darkest fears onto an innocent rhyme? For centuries, people whispered that Ring Around the Rosie was born in the plague years. The story is so perfectly chilling, so neatly aligned with the symptoms and the rituals, that it almost feels undeniable. But here's where things get interesting. Not everyone agrees. Many historians argue that the connection between the rhyme and the Black Death is a myth, a modern invention. According to them, there's no solid evidence that Ring Around the Rosie was sung during the 1300s or even the 1600s, when plague swept through London. The earliest versions of the rhyme only appear in writing centuries later, in the late 1800s. By then, the plague was long gone. So could it really be a medieval song of death if nobody wrote it down until hundreds of years later? That's the challenge skeptics raise. They say we force the plague interpretation onto the rhyme because it's a good story. And maybe too good. Some suggest that the Rosie might not be a rash at all, but literally a flower, a rose. The pocket full of posies could just mean children gathering blossoms. In this version, the rhyme is innocent nonsense, like most playground songs. Nothing more. Others point out that falling down is a common feature in children's games worldwide. Kids pretend to collapse for fun, not to mimic mass death. After all, we don't assume London Bridge is falling down means that the bridge was haunted. Why should we assume this rhyme means plague? And yet, the eerie parallels remain difficult to ignore. A rash that forms in a circle, the desperate use of herbs and flowers, the sneezing, the ashes, the collapse. Are we really supposed to believe it's all coincidence? This is where folklore becomes tricky. Oral traditions rarely leave neat paper trails. Songs, rhymes, and chants travel from mouth to mouth, changing with every generation. By the time someone bothers to write them down, their origins are already blurred. It's entirely possible that Ring Around the Rosie was much older than the records suggest. Passed down in whispers, adapted, reshaped, until finally collected by Victorian writers who loved to document nursery rhymes. And we also have to remember, Victorians were fascinated by the macabre. They were surrounded by death, superstition, and folklore. They might have recorded the rhyme precisely because it carried a darker meaning that intrigued them. So, is it plague history cleverly hidden in a rhyme? Or is it simply a coincidence, given new meaning by generations desperate for stories of survival? Whether you side with the skeptics or the believers, one thing is certain: Ring Around the Rosie has endured for centuries, clinging to our imagination, never fading from playgrounds or popular culture. And perhaps the real question isn't whether it was born in plague years, but why this rhyme continues to haunt us long after the Black Death itself was buried. Whether you believe it or not, Ring Around the Rosie is more than just a rhyme. It's a mirror, a reflection of how human beings, even children, make sense of the horrors around them. Think about it. Generations of kids laughing, holding hands, falling to the ground. To them, it's a game. But to us, with the weight of history behind it, the laughter sounds a little different. A little too hollow. Almost like an echo of the fear and death that once stalked every street. That's what makes this rhyme so powerful. It straddles the line between innocence and terror. On one side, it's pure nonsense, a circle game to pass the time. On the other, it's a whisper from the grave, a reminder of how fragile life was when the plague swept through Europe. A reminder that death was never far away. And maybe that's why it survived. Because even though centuries have passed, the emotions it carries still resonate. fear, loss, the desperate need to laugh in the face of despair. Ring Around the Rosie endures not just as a children's game, but as a haunting thread woven into our culture. Picture this. It's the 14th century, the streets of London. The air is thick with smoke, the bells toll endlessly, and a family huddles inside a darkened home. Outside, the cries of grief echo as carts full of bodies rumble past. And yet, somewhere nearby, a group of children are still playing. Their voices sing, "Ring around the Rosie, pocket full of posies." The words are simple, but in the shadows of history, they sound almost like a lullaby for the dead. And that image stays with us, because deep down, we understand what it means. Humanity never forgets its darkest moments. They slip into stories, songs, legends, and yes, even the games of children. So the next time you hear a child sing "Ring Around the Rosie," don't just smile at their innocence. Listen closely. Because behind the laughter, you might just hear the echoes of a world drowning in plague. A world where "we all fall down" wasn't pretend, it was reality. And here's the most unsettling part. Ring Around the Rosie isn't the only rhyme with a dark story hidden inside. Many of the songs you grew up with, the ones you thought were lighthearted nonsense, carry secrets just as disturbing. Some are about betrayal, some are about murder, and some are about scandals buried so deep they were nearly forgotten. That's why here at the Silent Lodge, we keep opening the door to these hidden histories. Because once you see the truth behind one rhyme, you can't help but wonder what's hiding inside the next.